And kicking us off, hello and welcome to our webinar today. We are going to be talking about how to master grant strategy, calendars, and teams. And I am excited to join Diane Leonard. She's one of our favorite speakers and contributors, knowledge professionals on topics of grants, teams, agile methodology, just so a wealth and breadth of knowledge there. And my name is Tammy Tilsey. I am with Willow Peak Consulting, and together we are hosting this webinar for Foundant Technologies. Few housekeeping items. As I mentioned, the chat is going to be going. It's often hard to keep up with the chat. We will be asking you to put your questions into the Q&A. That's where we'll manage questions and make sure we answer them. So if you put things in chat, it may fly by, that we'll be using, but make sure you put your questions into the Q&A. We will let you see all of the questions, and you can upvote so you don't duplicate a question that's already there, and we will utilize that in our Q&A section of the webinar. We also have closed caption for your needs. If you would like to enable that and customize any of those settings, please do so. And we will have a few polls. You'll see those as well. So on to our agenda. We'll do some quick introductions, and then we'll turn the time over to our guest speaker, Diane, and let her dive into this topic of managing your master grant strategy, calendar, and teams. After her section, which will run till about the top of the hour, I will then jump back in, give a few announcements, and talk about using grant management tools and solutions, how that can help you also manage your calendars and your teams and support your strategy, while Diane takes a look at the questions, and then we'll do a bonus Q&A. So this will be a little 5 to 10 minute break there, and we'll have that extended Q&A section to go the full 90 minutes. So this free webinar is brought to you by Foundant Technologies. Foundant has been serving the philanthropic community for many years, and since 2007, started out, and you may be familiar with their grant management for foundations and grant makers. If you've applied to any grants and have seen their logo, that is a funder who's using GLM, or what the Foundant calls Community Suite, which is a solution that helps funders as well as scholarship providers manage incoming grant applications. Foundant also has a line of products called Grant Hub and Grant Hub Pro, and these are grant management solutions for consultants, for nonprofits, organizations who are applying for grant funding, helping you manage your pre and post award grant management processes. So there are demonstrations of Grant Hub, which focuses on pre-award as well as tasks throughout the full cycle, and Grant Hub Pro, which has pre-award as well as post-award grant management for financials and other concerns that you may have for the full cycle of grant management. And you will receive demonstrations if you would like to invitations to those. And that is what I'll show you a little bit, how that supports managing your grant calendar. Excited to also announce that you can get education credits for today's educational webinar. This has been pre-approved by GPCI, Grant Professional Certification Institute, as accepted education towards their Grant Professional Certified credential. If you are a grant professional and want to learn more about getting those 3 letters, GPC, behind your name and getting certified, you can go to their website, put the link in here as well. And it is also approved as CFRE education for your fundraising certified credential there. Now for introductions. My name, as you know, is Tammy Tilsey. I'm the founder and principal of Willow Peak Consulting. I have worked for a long time with Foundant on these webinars and excited to expand the number of people that I'm working with to help organizations who serve nonprofits to expand their services and prospects and clients how to reach more people with your services and products. So that's me, Diane Leonard. I have worked with her for well over a decade and have met her at a Grant Professional Association's conference on the running and walking morning activities there. And I'm very pleased to call her a friend as well as a partner. Diane Leonard and her organization has a wealth of knowledge and experience helping nonprofits, not only with their grants, but also with their project management and other agile techniques. Let me stop sharing. I have a hard time doing more than one thing at a time, and let Diane share her screen with her slides and turn the time over to her for our education.
Thanks, Tammy. So excited to be with you and so grateful to Foundant for putting this session together and offering it to everyone here at no charge. I think it's a phenomenal contribution to the field. And as Tammy said, my name's Diane Leonard, pronouns she, her, and I am the president and owner of DH Leonard Consulting, and I do love all things grants. Now, I do recognize some names as the chat box is going so quickly, and so I've waved at a few, but there's definitely, I can't claim to know all the awesome grant professionals out there, and so there's one thing I want to call out on my bio slide. Well, Tammy actually mentioned it. The first conference she and I were at together, part of how we got to know each other was at their run walk group. So for me, in a field and in a type of work that can often unfortunately lead to burnout, I like to talk about what's fueling our work. For me, it's running. Although as I get a little bit older, I have become a cyclist, and so today was a cycling day, not a running day. But so check the box, got my movement in before my workday, and I promise, just one good big cup of caffeinated coffee. Now it's not caffeine, I promise, it's just hydration. But so that's what's fueling me. Moving and my one good cup of coffee. If, as we're getting into today's content, if you are comfortable sharing, what do you do to fuel your work, to be rejuvenated, to take care of yourself and hopefully avoid burnout? I'd love to have you share that in the chat. When we think about our self-care and avoiding burnout, I am channeling dear friends and colleagues, Jonna Rogers, Bethany Planton, Pat DuBois and Trish Bachman, the four individuals who have done a lot of research in the space of grant professionals and burnout. You can find their articles in past GPA journals. And that's part of why I love for it to be the way that we kick off our sessions. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the content, what is fueling you? Oh, I see some reading, walking the dog, absolutely. Travel, inspiring articles. Oh, cooking shows. Yes. I didn't know Roku had the Great American Baking Show until just this summer. I had no idea. Great way to relax for me. Meditation, knitting, reading, more reading, good coffee, working on farms. Oh, I can't even read all the awesome ways that you are fueling and rejuvenating your work. And so thank you for sharing. Now on the screen is, in terms of my time with you today, I want to talk about different ideas for how you can form and facilitate grant teams, how we can engage colleagues, whether we're a team of one grant professional or maybe we have our team of a few grant professionals. And I want to be really clear, I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the pro tips for this particular topic because it is so dependent on organizational culture, on personal preferences and styles. And so I'm really hoping that you're willing to share and learn with each other too. That's what the chat box is there for. share some ideas, some tips, some tricks, things you've worked with. Like I said, I don't have all the answers. Please don't tell my children that. We'll let them think that maybe I have a lot of the answers, but I'd love for you to share your experiences to help build on this topic together today. Now, as Tammy mentioned, the Zoom Q&A is where I would love to see any topical questions that you would like to have answered in that later Q&A section that we're going to have. So let's talk about grant teams, shall we? When we talk about grant teams, if I'm, say, presenting like a grant writing 101 type session, the first time I put this phrase up anywhere in content or use it in conversation, get a lot of, wait, hold on, what is, and I'm like, oh, let's define the jargon. What is a grant team? I have some definitions that I'm going to propose, but what do you think is a grant team? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the chat box if you're willing to share. What do you describe as a grant team if maybe a colleague asks you, hey, I saw this phrase about a grant team. What is that? Is that only a team of grant professionals, only a team of grant writers? So how do you define a grant team? There are many definitions. I don't think any of us have successfully in the field gotten it into Webster's dictionary yet, but I do think you will get a lot of answers if you go ahead and put the search term in Google or in Akosha or Bing. You're going to get a lot of different answers. I do like the me, myself, and I that I just saw go by. So grant professional, team of one. Oh, and I like your definition. Anyone involved in the carrying out of the grant. Brent said anyone administering a grant. Brenda says persons or group that help execute a grant successfully. Julia says the group of cohorts working together toward a funding opportunity. You're typing so fast, I can hardly even read. I love it. These are fantastic. So when we think about our grant team, what is it? I have a similar answer to what you've put forward. A group of colleagues that have a stake in creating competitive grant applications to ensure that their colleagues can successfully implement a funded project. This does not say anything about what title these individuals have to have. So while, yes, if you are an employee or maybe you're a consultant providing the grant writing services for an organization, you're right. There might be one of you, but there are more of your colleagues around you, whether peer employees or they're your clients if you're a consultant. There are more folks around you that are part of this grant team that we want to talk about today. But for each and every organization represented here on the line today, I bet that grant team looks a little bit different. That's why I said I can't claim, not even close to having all the answers, because each organization might take some of the same ideas and implement them in a slightly different way because of your meeting cadence, because of how you are fully remote, or because of how you're hybrid, or because of how you're distributed across 7 locations across the state. That's just to get us started with some of the differences that we're going to see across grant teams. So with that common definition of having a stake in seeing grants be successful, both in the pre-award and the post-award, the grant team could be, sure, formally somewhere on a committee roster for an organization. It could be informally pulled together when a new SAMHSA grant application comes up or a new state arts council grant opens. It could be a group that comes together. Maybe they all love to have morning bagels together as part of their meeting, or perhaps it's a group that comes together over Teams or Zoom, or maybe does most of their work over email. No judgment on how you are structured, how and where and when you meet, as long as the core purpose of that group is about making grants be sustainable, be possible for the organization. The grants team could, depending on the size of your organization, depending on the scale of your grant seeking strategy, could be different for the big strategy conversations. What are the 4 top priorities that we have for this year for finding grant revenue? Where are the places we need resources? That might be a senior leadership type grant team discussion. And then there can be, again, depending on organizational size and structure, it could be that individual applications get unique grant teams pulled together. I was talking to an organization just yesterday that is indeed large enough, distributed enough that they have the big high level grant team that talks about some of those big annual priorities. But then, well, they were talking about a capital project related to a new healthcare clinic. And that had one person that I've seen in some other grant team conversations. But the other three players on the line that are taking the lead are different. They're unique to that grant team. That's fine. Does not have to be the same people talking about grants each and every time, especially as we're talking about some of those larger organizations. Again, what is the common denominator? It's a group of people who want to help support seeing grants be sustainable, be successful, right? We're here to be competitive. We want to get the grant award. So that is the core of what is the grant team about. Do they have to have a team name? Do they need to have team t-shirts, a team slogan? No, but it could be fun. If any of your grant teams have had a little bit of fun with kind of your own personality as a grant team, bonus points if you want to tell us about it in the chat. I've worked with some teams over the years that have come up with some fun ways to kind of have a culture of their own related to their grant team work. But I'm curious to hear if any of you have had that experience or gone that route with your team. So please, if you're willing to share, we'd love to hear in the chat box. Well, how do we form this team? Before I talk to you about the steps that my team and I take when we're looking at putting this idea in place in an organization, I would like to know, now that we've talked about our definition, my definition, I've seen some agreement with you in the chat as well. Given that definition, how many of you would say you have that type of team in place if you're an employee, or if you're a consultant, you're helping to put those teams in place with your clients? Could you let me know why for yes, N for no, maybe M for maybe? There's no judgment on your answer here. I'm just curious to know everyone's experiences here in the room. All right, doing some quick mental math as I watch those answers come in through the chat box so quickly. My goodness, thank you. So we've got a mix. Many of you do, but I see plenty of no's and maybes. Now, even for those of you that do have a grant team in place, one of the things that we've seen is most likely to kind of shake the foundation of a grant team is any sort of staff change, whether it be CEO, president level change, or development director change, or vice president of programs change, or director of the adult day program change. Any of those changes, actually, let's not forget, anytime the grant professional or grant writer changes, we see that kind of mixes things up with a grant team, destabilizes the team for at least a short period of time, because now you've got new players to norm and storm and get used to working with together. So even if you said yes in the chat box, you might want to pay attention to these steps so that you're thinking about, what if we all of a sudden have a change in terms of who are our players in the grant team? So the first step that I'd usually ask a group to consider, if they do not already have a grant team in place, well, all right, definitely I'm not about labels, right? It's okay if the group of colleagues that want to have a stake in seeing grants be successful, it's okay if the grant team language never lands. If that is not what they want to call themselves, if they don't want to say they're part of a grant team, that's okay. Not mad about it. But that first step is to think about, what ideally for our organization do we have in place for our big strategic conversations? What group? Is it board level? Is it development committee level? Is it senior leadership staff level? Where and how can we have conversations about big annual priorities? Do we need well, of course, we all want money for general operating support, but do we need money for opening a new clinic? Do we need funding because we need to add more sites for our after school programming? What is the most important work that we need to try and secure grant funding for in this next year, 18 months, 24 months? We also want to talk about then, okay, if we know where our plan is set, if we know where we're going to talk about those big things that will serve as a filter for us for the next year, how often do we want to check in on progress towards those goals? Who's the group that wants to see a dashboard? I didn't say wants to see the whole Excel spreadsheet of all the things that are coming out of our project management for managing the deadlines, but who wants to see the dashboard about what's pending, what's been approved? How often do we want to check in on that? How do we want to check in on progress towards overall goal? Some groups choose to do that every 2 weeks, so they really keep their sight on how are we doing towards progress towards goal? What's kind of the pulse of what's happening? Some might say, oh no, 4 weeks. Again, it's up to the organization. That's why I want to talk about expectations and who are the right players, where and how are we going to check in on our progress. Our second step then is to think about who is already, and I say happily, little asterisks or air quotes, who's already helping you out? Who are the people who might read a draft, provide some strong suggestions or recommendations for ways to strengthen it? Who might check in with you and say, I think our program has a report coming up next month. Could we talk about it now? Because I'd like to make sure we get that information to you on time or early. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to judge those who are not already being proactive and thinking about this, but these are our champions for the grant team. The folks who, while they might not be a grant writer, grant professional, are the ones who are already embodying that grant team idea. Here's what I would love to do, though. The folks that I bet you just came up with some names in your mind. I want us to give them a big shout out. If you want to put their initials or their first name in the chat box so that we can just give them all like a nice round of applause. Thank you for helping. I think that really serves us all well to recognize these awesome folks who are already helping you. Now, the next time you see them on a Zoom call or in the lunchroom or at a meeting, say, hey, I gave you a shout out today in a webinar. Really appreciate how much you help support our grant seeking efforts. I promise you, they're going to it's going to make them feel so good to know that you recognize and appreciate that, because let's be honest, right? We're all wearing lots of hats in our organizations. We've got a lot on our plates. We want to make sure that we say thank you and acknowledge those who are already really going to bat with us to help make grants successful and sustainable. Oh, look at, again, the chat box, amazing. All those initials and names that just went through. That's really, really heartwarming to see how many great colleagues are already helping you along the way. So there might be some gaps though. You might say, well, I feel really confident. I saw someone say they have 3 folks that they wanted to give shout outs to. So you might say, I feel pretty confident that many of our roles are taken care of. Maybe I've got strong representation, great support from programs. I've got somebody maybe from HR or operations that always, here's your resumes, here's the job descriptions, right? They're coming in as fast as they can after a request is made. Maybe it's someone from finance. You've recently maybe had a change in the finance staff. Maybe you're trying to have somebody involved in the process from that. Or maybe it's that you're about to launch a new program, and so maybe the program team's not sure who's going to be kind of the voice to the grant team for this particular new program. But look around and think, what are those skill sets that I don't have, or those areas of expertise that I want to have in my grant team? Now, I didn't ask you in the chat box to tell me what specifically you were so excited about for their skills and how they're helping. But maybe in this step, you look around and you say, you know what I really want? I want someone with Jonna Rogers level energy around logic models. I want to find someone in our organization who loves helping work on a good logic model with me, I'm going to put out a call in my organization because I know that I might need them. What you're thinking about are what are those key things that make up your dream team? It's very rare that I cite anything related to superheroes, Marvel movies. I'm really bad at knowing the characters and who they are, but well, it's the only way I can come up to describe with the grant teams that do get put together. They inspire in me an image of superheroes. I couldn't tell you who's on the screen for all of them, except for I do know Iron Man and Captain America. And so, who is your superhero that you're looking to add? What is that extra skill that you want? I gave the logic model example. Maybe it's someone who loves helping to review budget narratives. You and finance have collaborated on it together, and you want someone else who loves numbers to come to the table. These are the extra dream team skills that you're looking for. Maybe the dream team analogy doesn't really resonate for you as much, or it doesn't visualize for your team who else might we want to have. Maybe it's more about the key activities and saying, do I have someone? Do we have someone who can help with these different activities that take place when we're thinking about grant applications and grant implementation? Do we have someone who represents this voice, this responsibility in the organization? We could use it as a checklist instead. Either approach works, but we've thought about who do we already have? Who do we want to have? Or what skills do we want to have? So then it's time to invite them. Invite them to the meeting where the morning bagels are happening. Invite them into the Zoom room. Again, lots of variation for how that invitation lands and who it is best to issue said invitation. Worked in a large multi-hospital healthcare organization to set up their grant team a few years ago. And in that situation, right, this is immediately pre-COVID. And so I just want to give that context too. So even back then, pre-pandemic, full plates. You want to ask me to sit on something else, right? That was the concern with asking some of the key players to be part of a grant team. And so to show the commitment that the senior leadership had to that, that's where those invitations they decided had to come from, not from the healthcare organization's foundation. Great. What is best for your organization? So in whatever feels appropriate, make sure that when you're making the ask to your colleagues, you're clear about what type of involvement you're asking for. Is it that once or twice a year get together for the big strategic visioning? Is it to be part of the group that you're going to see a dashboard every 4 weeks, help us pay attention to our progress towards goal? Or is it that you're asking them to hop in on the pre-planning work and the application work for maybe 1 or 2 federal grants during the year? I say nonchalantly, just part of 1 or 2 federal grants. The more specific you can be about the type of ask you're making, the easier it is for them to understand, is this something I am going to be able to commit to that I can be a part of the team for? So those are the high level steps that we like to consider, again, when helping to put a team into place, or if we come into an organization that maybe has part of a team and we're trying to think about how to strengthen or expand a grant team, those are the consistent steps that we're following. Well, now we've got the players. How is it that we're going to communicate? What are the tools that we're going to use? You might say, Diane, this is really pretty basic tools. Well, the way our organizations operate is far from basic anymore. In fact, they are incredibly complex. And we want our grant teams to be as efficient and as effective as possible. And we don't want the teams itself and the contributions they're making to add any undue stress to what could already be a stressful grant seeking process. So some quick steps again. Now, if you want to play along, you can type your answers into the chat box and let us know your answers to these steps. So in the chat box, step 1, I've just put a delineator there. Is your team co-located, so all in one location, or are you in a variety of locations? So you can tell us co, You could say variety, you could say multi, but let's see what we've got. We're gonna, I don't know, maybe be completely split right down the middle. Okay. But this is really important as you think about how are we best going to work together. It's really different. I've been running a remote team for, yeah, nearly 20 years. I was remote before remote was cool. I don't actually know. I've never been cool. We'll have to leave that by the side. So if you are fully remote as a team, wow, are we going to have to rely on our tools because life is really different than walking next door to someone else's office or cubicle, right? So then step 2. Let me put another delineator here in the chat box. Step 2. I love a good tool. Love, love, love my tools. What tools are you using? How is it that you and your team communicate? How is it that you track your project management? I get that you're like, that's a long list of tools, Diane, that we rely on. Go ahead and tell me your favorite tool for how you share, visualize your work, communicate. The more tools, the merrier. Now, Megan Martin, our marketing and training product owner, is on the line and is like, oh, tools. Megan loves talking in particular about project management tools. It's one of the things that she actually will talk about live in classes. Sidebar, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, I see a lot of the ways that we write and get feedback. I see a lot of ways that you're tracking your deadlines, the ways that you're thinking about your donors, the way you're thinking about your grant management. Excellent. You should probably, I'm guessing, have a toolbox that has multiple tools because sometimes you don't just need a hammer, right? Sometimes you need a screwdriver. Sometimes you need more than Google Sheet to keep track of your deadlines. Sometimes you need some project management software, some grant management software, for sure. All right. So now this one gets a little trickier. Step 3. This is not about you. This is about the rest of your team. Whoever you have just put onto your team, what tool, so I want one answer, what tool can the majority of your grant team get to the fastest? Think about how many clicks it takes for them to get there. Who can get there the fastest? What is that tool? Again, I'm expecting a wide range of answers here, right? You're in different groups, different org culture, different platforms, Google-based, Microsoft-based, no judgment. Interesting, because I'm seeing email pop up as well, like email's faster for them than a lot of other things. Okay. All right. So there's no judgment, but what the reason I have this as a step, you're used to what you navigate. And if you're thinking about what it's like to ask a grant team member to contribute and provide information, we don't want to put any barriers in their way. We don't want them to slow down and be like, wait a second. So I have to go here and then there. We want to make it as fast, easy, efficient as possible for them to get into the document, into the budget draft, into the logic model where we want their input as possible. So you've given us your answer. Not going to try and change that. But your optional challenge for after today is to think about the next time you make an ask of a grant team member, in whatever way is appropriate in your organization, how many actual clicks does it take for them to get to be where they should be? If the answer is not 1, how can you make it less this next time? So if you said it took 2 clicks, how can you try and make it 1 click next time? If you said it took 4 clicks, how can I try and make it 3 the next time? Can I make it faster for my colleagues to get where I need them to be? And then your last step, now that you've thought about how to get folks into the work and where you want their input, step back and think about where are you going to provide updates? Where are you going to provide those reports? Dashboards. I like to say dashboards more than reports. Reports tend to make us think of Excel sheets that folks might not really see all the detail for. It's a lot to take in. What is it that we can quickly show in terms of progress towards goal, whether we're talking about a single application. Hey, how are we doing on progress towards goal for this big multi-partner federal grant? Or how are we doing on achieving our revenue goal for the year? Or how are we doing on achieving our foundation renewal percent? How many are we going to keep? Right? These are the sort of questions that we're trying to visually show to our stakeholders. So what is the tool or the format that gives answers to the questions that are most important to that strategic team we talked about earlier? Awesome. And I see a wide range of the different ways that you are providing this information. Fantastic. Oh, a dashboard. Every morning I just saw go through the chat box. I'm like, wow, I love dashboards. I'm fascinated and would love to hear more if you want to reach out to me, because the every morning part caught my eye. That's pretty frequent. That's cool. I'm wondering if people look at it that often. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. I'm very interested. So we thought about our tools, as few clicks as possible. Now, how do we engage those colleagues in the process? Different colleagues are going to be engaged in different ways. No right or wrong answer for which colleague is engaged in which way. What I wanted to do is give some of the different options that we see. So again, when you're making the ask, you can be clear about where and how you're asking for input, and maybe you can start to expand some of your grant team members' contributions for where and how they feel comfortable. So let's look at these different options in a little greater depth. So could folks help to create the big annual strategy? Sure, that could be the contribution, right? These are the big priorities that we want to find funding for this year. Might not know the details of what it is, but we're thinking about what's the strategic plan, what's our vision, what are the things we need money for. So that's a great way to engage them. It could be that it's looking at how many federal grants are we anticipating applying for this year? How many state grants are we anticipating applying for? How many foundation grants? Do we think that those grants that are anticipated, do they align with our strategy, with what we're trying to find funding for? We want to make sure that everyone's on board for our plan. We're trying to minimize the questions. Wait, why didn't we go after 6 federal grants? Why didn't we go after 4? Why did we only go after 1 state grant this year? Or why are we talking about 10 state grants this year? Is that feasible? We're trying to have our leadership group ask those types of questions now, big picture, high level, before we're worried about, wait, this just opened and it's due in 34 days. Can we do it? Should we do it? We'd like to have the structure of the higher level agreement because it helps make decisions when something unexpected pops up. Now, some of you may have already heard me talk in previous sessions over the past few years about not only using a traditional calendar or a traditional Excel sheet to lay out the plan, but making it interactive, thinking about something that it feels more flexible for how we can move things and play with ideas. We've done it virtually using limitless whiteboards like Mural and Miro. We've done it in person with sticky notes on the wall. But this gives it an opportunity, gives us as a facilitator an opportunity to make it more of a 3-dimensional discussion about what's our capacity, how do these things align with our priorities, than what looks like an Excel sheet that folks say, oh yeah, we can get all of that done this year. You say, can we? So I think the visual flexibility for you as a facilitator is a great way to expand the conversation. What other ways can we engage our colleagues? Sure, not just the plan, probably the most common way, maybe the most obvious that your team members think you're asking for their support. Here's some information for you to put in the narrative. Here, I can read that paragraph, or I can read those 2 pages and let you know, yep, we can commit to this. Do you want me to read and like give some Oxford comma feedback and some grammar edits, yes or no, right? The way that colleagues expect to be engaged is usually around content. Now, to think about the types of information we're gathering, I know that sometimes, going back to our superhero analogy, some of us feel like the superhero. We brought our cape to the office today, virtual or in person, because we feel like we are trying to gather all the information to finish writing our draft. Definitely feel like we need to channel Cheryl Kester for this one. Cheryl did a fantastic presentation many years ago at the Grant Professionals Association on MSU. No, Michigan folks, not Michigan State University, making stuff up, but not Mad Libs style. Creating structure in documents that makes it easier, faster, less stressful for our colleagues to give information to us when we need it within a draft. In fact, actually, Cheryl did a short 10-minute version of that presentation at the Learn Grant Summit a few years ago that Foundant and our team co-sponsored. So, ooh, look at that. Thanks, Megan. The link is already in the chat box. So if you want to listen to Cheryl's 10-minute clip talking about this idea, the great structure that you can put into a document so that you're not asking an open-ended question, which might feel really stressful to a grant team member, but rather structured sentences, maybe something like what you see on the screen now. Okay, we don't have a project name. I'm going to put the placeholder here until somebody can tell me what it is. I heard you say 7th and 8th graders, but how many 7th and 8th graders? So different colleagues respond to questions, requests for input in different way. If you're not sure, or if maybe you're having a difficult time getting the information, going a different route in terms of your structure can help make the most common way that grant team members are contributing a little faster. Now, I already mentioned Jonna Rogers. You heard me talk about her enthusiasm for logic models and how you might be looking for someone on the grant team to help share a passion for logic models with you. But it's not just logic models. It could also be the work plan. It could be the budget. Where are you thinking about engaging your colleagues in that key program design information that you're going to then use to write the narrative? Anybody want to write a good, smart objective? In fact, now, right, it's not only SMART, we're talking about SMART-T objectives, an I and an E afterwards. How many of you, no, let me ask that question a little differently. On a scale of 1 to 10, what is your comfort level with writing SMART-Y objectives? Not just SMART, but SMART-T objectives. So the I for inclusion, the E for equity. Zero judgment on what your answer is, but as we think about writing these SMART-Y objectives, do we always have the expertise to know all the information necessary to write these awesome objectives? No. Do we always know all the awesome information necessary to complete our work plan? No. Do we always know all the key activities or the ways that we might present our outcomes in our logic model? No. How about the details for our budget? How we're going to get to our final numbers? I'll probably no again, right? So even when you feel really comfortable with how to finalize the program design information, how to write the SMART-Y objectives, how to finalize the logic model, usually we need our colleagues' input to help complete the information. And so this is something that I don't want you to discount with the grant team. I want you to instead celebrate it, highlight it, put a spotlight on it. This is an amazing contribution that colleagues make to the work that will result in successful grant applications. That work on maybe one logic model might now influence 5 more grant applications because it's going to be the agreed upon base for that upcoming work. Make sure that you're giving you're giving credit and you're celebrating those grant team members for those contributions. How about our evaluation? Who's helping to input client data into maybe it's Salesforce? Who is it that is taking the youth focus group that was conducted and putting all that data together so that you can use it in grant applications or in grant reports? Does anyone already include any of those folks in your definition of a grant team? Want to raise your hand if you do. They're incredibly important roles, but they're not always the folks who are sitting in the meeting or sitting on the grant team call. But without that information, we'd have a much harder time putting our applications together. So they're sort of, again, they might not be in the room, but to me, they're a friend of the team. They're a friend of the grant team. They are providing incredibly important information. So when you're thinking about celebrating and giving credit to those who are helping to contribute, those that have the stake and seeing grants be successful, I'd encourage you to remember these folks as well. Now, you might say, I've got some really well intentioned board members or other colleagues who want to help, but they don't know how to help. I think serving as a mock reviewer is a great spot for those colleagues who are like, "Ooh, grant team sounds fun. How can I help?" So, a mock review is going to give the opportunity for your colleague. Yes, they could certainly provide some feedback on grammar or on word choice, but copy editing, right? That's about their opinion as the editor, as the person. If you're asking someone to serve as a mock reviewer, what you're really asking them to do is to say, okay, here's the New York State preservation guidelines for this opportunity. Here's the application that we've drafted. Can you please give us your thoughts on how you would score this section against the rubric that was provided? Fresh eyes. They're not actually your reviewer, they're a mock reviewer, right? It's creating that sense of what might a reviewer with fresh eyes, how might they score you? And that can take your competitive dial and just turn it up a few notches. So we find that to be a spot that some of those really well-intentioned colleagues, like I said, board members, volunteers who really want to help, that's a great extra spot to consider adding them. Now, a lot of what we're looking at today is really about facilitation. And I know that many of us, whether you're full-time grant writer, grant professional or not, we're wearing many hats. Like the Caps for Sale book when we were little, and maybe some of you remember that. Like that number of caps. How many of you would call yourself, identify with the word facilitator? How many of you would maybe even put that in your LinkedIn profile? An expert facilitator, strong facilitator. Go ahead and let me know. Humble brag about it. That was a word that didn't resonate with me for quite a while till I realized, wait a second, in my toolbox are a lot of different facilitation techniques because different groups, different players. For some, my punny humor, gotta keep that ready at, right at the ready because that's going to help to lighten the mood a little bit when it's stressful. For others, it's about project management techniques and how to help keep teams in a time box as a facilitator without being too rude about the clock. All right. Ooh, most treasured skill. Stephanie, I like that. So, yes, facilitation is an incredible part of our work when we think about the grant team. So, what is it that's going to make your facilitation of a grant team successful? I have 4 key components that I think everybody's got different winding paths, different skill sets, again, different organizational cultures. But when I try to condense it into what makes it so that there's a successful facilitation happening, these are the 4 key things I found in place. The first is that there has been a confirmation, or you will confirm, who is the facilitator and who are the members. Now, why you might say, Diane, I'm the facilitator. Maybe. You might be the facilitator for most of the applications, but perhaps, like in that big healthcare example, not the facilitator in those big strategy sessions. The CEO for the healthcare organization was the facilitator. That is who everyone was there and ready to listen to. On the other hand, I'm thinking of a large southern city that we worked with that had a collaborative application with literally 30 partners. And there was some debate about who from the city was going to be the key facilitator. the supportive facilitator. I was the outsider. And it was someone who had no real grant experience, but was incredibly well respected by all the partners for his role in the past 35 years in that particular community and the different ways that he had worked with different organizations. So it's not always us. That's my point in those very quick examples. So it's important to think about who is our facilitator. And then who are those team members? Go back to that idea of the dream team. What skills are we looking for? Do we have slightly different teams for different situations? So a team that is successful, a grant team that the facilitator is making, increasing the total amount of grant applications out the door, the grant dollars then that are coming back in, right? Those scenarios usually, as part of the foundation, have clearly defined who are our facilitators, who are our players. They have also usually taken the time to set expectations, setting maybe a formal team working agreement. That's a phrase that comes from like a lot of agile project management. But what is it that we're here to do together? What is our heart-centered purpose? What are the different roles and skills that are being brought to the table? Where and how do we communicate? If we're all internal, you might say, oh, well, Diane, we're all going to be on teams. Are we? Or do we have some communication that's happening in Teams and some that's happening in email and some that's happening in comments in the document? And so we feel like we're talking to each other all the times in these different places. Which is our primary method for communicating about the project? If we were going to say something that we wanted everyone to know, where would we want to say it? Those are the sort of things that we would want to talk about in terms of expectations. Also, things like, well, how often are we going to meet? Do we meet once a week throughout this big federal grant application period? Do we meet every 2 weeks to talk about the big grant strategy for the year? It's up to your team to decide what's right, but let's be sure to set some boundaries with each other for where and how we're going to work. Where can those materials be found? Ideally, how short of a list of clicks do we have to make? Can we get it to be within 1 or 2 clicks? How easy can we make it for our colleagues? So those rules and those boundaries are a part of many team working agreement templates. So in fact, our team, we've got a project called Agile in Nonprofits, and we've got a team working agreement template if you want to take a look at that idea and use it when you come together as a new grant team. So that's something you might want to consider. Now, part of that Agile idea is making work visible, not hiding work, not having work be siloed. So how can we make it visible to each other, to our colleagues, even if you are the one who is responsible and have that responsibility of getting the submit button clicked, getting the reports out the door? How can we make it visible to the rest of the colleagues? What's happening? What's coming up? This literally is a photo of a rolling whiteboard in my office. Megan can attest. There are whiteboards on every wall that stands still, and and then I had to get some rolling ones too. Now, most of our work is in virtual whiteboards, but there's something about laying out the work physically, visually on the board to see what are we committed to, what's happening next, that presents a slightly different dimensional view for myself, for colleagues, for clients, than if we are in flat reports or Excel sheets. So I do encourage you to think about in your organization, what does it mean to make work visible? I'm going back to that comment because I'm like, wow, a daily dashboard that's shared, that level of visibility to your colleagues, whether they look at it every day or not, that's amazing. Absolutely is amazing. So this last one, I think, is actually the most important. And I didn't save it for last so that I could say it, but this is the one that I think many of us forget to do because there are always more deadlines coming right at us. and that is to celebrate the victories of our team. When do we celebrate the most as grant professionals, grant writers, if I'm making a broad assumption for everybody here today? Yep, when we get the award. Maybe what's our second biggest celebration moment? Clicking the submit button. Yes, yes, yes. I would love to hear about the other times that you and your team celebrate. When do you stop to celebrate your team? When do your colleagues stop to celebrate each other? If you're willing to share in the chat box, that is what I really want you to focus on as you're thinking about facilitating. Yes, tools, minimizing number of clicks, making work visible. But when I look at the different grant teams we've worked with over the last almost 20 years, the teams that really thrive and are sustainable in their work, they do this well. And so there's going to be, I would guess, very different answers for different types of things that you celebrate as a group. A great new call and relationship building effort with a foundation, a fantastic conversation with a state staff member for a funding agency at a conference, getting invited from the letter of inquiry to the full proposal. Still no award money yet, right? You're on your way there, but that's a fantastic thing. Having a funder not just say yes like they have for the last 5 years, but to increase their award this time. That's a double celebration. Celebrate the award, also celebrate the increase. Those are just some of the details. When you see the impact of the objectives being met, getting the data in, yep, awards for sure. When you get the invitation, absolutely. When you complete the final report, oh, I celebrate planning and submission, but I like the planning part. Getting folks to be part of a pre-planning conversation before a federal grant is open. Not only should you celebrate that, but please do make sure you pat yourself on the back too. Those are all fantastic, such great things to celebrate. Keep looking for them. Come up with ways to create team rituals. Our team's known for our yellow smiley bell that we ding and then send around over Slack and an email with clients. Take time to celebrate meeting mini goals, getting a draft done and two partners on the agreed upon date. That's got nothing to do with submission yet. It's a step towards. But look for little things that you can celebrate and create some team rituals around that creates that culture of celebration for far more than the awards, because there's amazing work being done outside that. Now, I know that we talked about some of the foundations of like engaging a grant team in research and how to make work visible. So I want to make sure that you know that part of what we wanted to offer you as a thanks for being part of today is we've got a grant research guidebook. If you went to our website, that would cost you money. Please don't go there today. You get it at no charge for being part of this session. But I'm so excited by the questions I've seen popping up and the things I know that are in the Q&A, and you're going to have the chance to, well, hear my answers here, but please be sure that you also feel comfortable reaching out if you have any questions. But I'm excited to bring it back to Tammy so that we can talk about some of the different things that can help with some of the content I've talked about, I think.
Yes, thank you so much, Diane. I know some of the folks have a next meeting to go to, so let me go ahead and reshare my screen here. I'm always losing my controls. Okay, here we go. There we go. Diane, am I sharing the right screen?
Perfect.
All right. I am launching a poll. If you have to go, hopefully you can answer this. If you want us to connect Diane, your email with Diane so that she can send this out, please answer yes here. If you would rather not, go ahead and just mark no or don't reply, that's fine. And we will make sure that you are able to get that free resource and maybe some other related offerings and resources from Diane. I will leave that up as I go to the next slide here on our agenda. We have given Diane just a little breather to grab a glass of water, as well as take a peek at some of the questions you have already put into the Q&A that she would like to answer live in our bonus Q&A. And so while she does that, I am going to talk a little bit about some upcoming webinars. We have an upcoming webinar next month on AI and using that in research, grant writing, and doing reports. Also, improving your critical thinking skills for research, writing, and management of your grants. Managing existing grant awards. So a little bit more on the post-award side in October, November, and December. We have getting invited to the prom. I love that. I got to put a little dance icon here. But if you've ever received a statement or seen that a funder does not accept unsolicited proposals, how do you deal with that? Is that something that you have bumped up against and feel that that is next in the priorities for your grant seeking? It isn't always the first thing to tackle. Might be easier to work with funders who welcome new applications, but if that's something where you find a fit, that's it coming up in November. And December is building your compliance team, again, for post awards. So those are upcoming ones. This registration for August should be up today, but you could always look at this website here, as well as we will have Diane's added to the list, but you could go and see past webinars as well and see which ones have been approved for education credits, as we've mentioned earlier. So talking about grant management calendars and teams, wanted to really have you reflect, as you have already in the chat, what are you tracking and managing your data today? What tools do you use? And how do you connect your team together, whether whiteboard and where do you store centrally your documents, etc. Sometimes this can be a multitude of different solutions, and it's very difficult to make it just one answer, right? But as Diane mentioned, making it a goal to provide fewer clicks, to provide fewer places, more organization, that's always a goal. And I wanted to encourage you always to give us feedback. There will be, after this question and answer period, a survey that you'll see in your browser. Please fill that out. Let us know what other topics. I saw in the chat, I'm always listening, a couple topics on dashboards and specifically for grants and some other solution or other topics. So please share in the post-webinar survey and connect with me. And Diane has already shared her contact information. So I am going to stop sharing now and bring everybody back to, gotta find my controls. Stop sharing. Well, let me end the poll first here. Thank you so much for filling that out. And there we go. I could stop sharing. Diane, did you get a chance to look at the questions and have a few that you want to start off with? Oh, you're on mute.
Muted. Rookie. I did get a chance to look at all those questions, and there are some great ones. So let's start with if we're thinking about recommended tools or systems for managing projects. I'm going to start there because it feels like that's kind of a transition from Tammy, all the great things that you just showed, to then also answering this broader question that was before your demo. So the answer is that there's no one perfect tool. Sorry, Foundant, right? And the reason why, they know I say that, is that it's about your organization and the systems you already use and what might fit well. So I'm always happy to talk about like different types of tools that we've seen organizations use, right? There's different price points. Foundant is very affordable. If you're big into you want one that's all about federal and connecting to accounting, right? Like there's different reasons that people want different tools. And so I think that the biggest thing to do is understand what are your basic requirements for what you have and what you want, and then ask lots and lots and lots of questions about the tool. Ask your Grant Pro peers for input, maybe ask on Grant Zone for people's experiences with a tool, and then talk to the awesome teams. Like the demos that I've gotten from Foundant over the years are so helpful. So I would always ask the tool providers to give a demo, to link you to their Facebook community or to show what their YouTube videos show so that you can learn about the tool before you get too committed to it yourself. So that's my broad answer. And I see that Tammy just put more about Grant Hub and Grant Hub Pro pricing in the chat box because that was a question that had come up as well. And Tammy, someone also asked if you could put that link to the past educational webinars in the chat box too. So I think if you keep an eye out for that one, you're going to see it in the chat box here momentarily. So then another question that came up was actually around my mock review comments, right? I said one of the things that grant team members could do, something that's a little non-traditional, right? Not the usual, help me get information to write it, could be about being a mock reviewer. So a mock reviewer is an individual that is some sort of fresh eyes. Maybe they have some knowledge, maybe they have a lot of knowledge about your organization and about the work you do, but they've not been part of the application. That's actually the important thing, is that they've not been part of writing it, they've not been part of the attachments. They're really fresh eyes so that they're looking at your application just like a reviewer would for the first time. And the point of looking at it is to say, not missed a comma over here, or this could have been clearer for me, but to say, how was it against the scoring rubric? How was it against the criteria for the grant maker? Now, then the follow-up question that I saw in the chat box was a very true comment as well. Very few non-government funders provide a scoring rubric. So how do you handle that? How would you create that mock review process? You're right. It's usually government where we see a clear rubric that you would use a mock review for. Our team does have a mock review guide on our website that we offer that has a template for exactly those situations where it's okay, I didn't get a foundation rubric. Here are some of the normal best questions and the types of scores that are being used based on our experience with foundations. That's what we created it on. So basically you can make your own too, right? Like we have the template we make, but you could make your own template that you use for all grants. How did I do in describing the need? How did I do describing project description? How clear was my budget and its justification? You could make your own one-page scoring template that you use in the non-government or the non-rubric situations. So I would encourage you to check that out. Some questions about what does a logic model look like? Well, it looks different for each and every funder that might ask for one. But if you think of a logic model like a blueprint for a program or a project, it's a high-level outline of some of the key program design elements, your resources and inputs, your key activities, your outputs, your outcomes, and ultimately your impact. There is all sorts of information about logic models on the Grant Professionals Association website, in some of their blogs. I know that they've got webinars. I know Foundant has done webinars on logic models. So if you want to go back to that past webinar list, the Kellogg Foundation also has a fantastic free resource section, and they talk about evaluation and logic models there. So just a handful of very quickly listed resources related to logic models. There also is a book that's kind of skinny. You can tell from my background, books, right? And it's called something like Guidebook for Logic Models. It's a skinny little blue book. Yes, I'm guessing I have it on my Goodreads bookshelf, but off the top of my head, I'm not coming up with it. But so there's also some like nice little resources too if you prefer book learning. Whew, these are such good questions. Pause for hydration.
I'll jump in with a question that was asked for me specifically. In Grant Pro, the link to FDO and or Grant Station as part of Grant Hub Pro specific subscription. Yes, it is. You do not need another subscription from either of those partners. It is included in the price of the Grant Hub Pro grant management tool. So you get the grant management as well as the access there. Definitely encourage you to set up a one-on-one so you see specifically how that differs from how you use those solutions. But
when that benefit got announced, right, that's such an amazing linkage. Because I know the more tools you start to pay for, onesie twosie, the bigger the budget gets. And look at that, Megan, magic, high five. The link to the logic model book that I just clumsily called out is already in the chat box for you if you wanted to see that. So thanks, Meg. So we got a question about how to manage all of this when you're essentially a one-person shop, right? So one person wearing all the hats. And I want to acknowledge that you are 100% right for that it's a lot to manage as a one-person shop. It's a lot to manage, even if there are more grant professionals than just one, right? Because that means that your grant seeking portfolio is proportionally even a lot bigger. So it's not easy for any of us, I think, to manage that we have to be a great facilitator and think about the individual grant team and how to get them in the fastest number of clicks and keep people updated and keep our work visual. When, wait a second, we're supposed to be writing and submitting grants, right? There's a lot to take care of. And the idea behind focusing on the grant teams, thinking about the strategy and the calendars is so that as efficient and visible as our work can be, it makes for fewer questions for us, potentially fewer interruptions, potentially more people offering to help in ways that might help move the strategy forward. That's really some of the why behind it. So I would give yourself some grace. It is a lot to manage, but think about each organization is going to have its own solution for what looks right for how you approach strategy and how you approach grant teams. I have said many times in our house, we don't worry about other people. We just worry about ourselves. And that's really true in this because for as many awesome professionals as there are on the line, there are going to be that many different answers and approaches. I would encourage you to talk to others, learn and hear what they're seeing that works in their organization if you feel like they're kind of like you. I was asked on that original slide that had the team of now I don't even remember what's the team of superheroes. See, I'm so bad at my Marvel movies. I should, not. But what did I mean by the big kahuna? So like who's the decision maker that might give a go, no-go decision or might be the, yes, I stamp that this is what we're going to do. I don't put a title there because it's not necessarily like org chart specific. It's really different in each organization, but who's the person that gets to say yes? Maybe to go back to more of like a presidential reference, like who says the buck stops here? Wasn't that Lyndon Johnson? So who's the person that gets to make that decision or commitment for your team? So we talked a lot about who to look for in a grant team. There's questions about when also to look for folks in a grant team. No time like the present. You might not have had one before. Don't wait for your next fiscal year. Don't wait for your next strategic planning meeting. Think about how you could use some of these ideas, I think, in even your next application, your next development team meeting. I would not recommend feeling the pressure to do all the things all at one time. That's not sustainable. That leads to burnout. That makes us drink too much caffeine. Pick one thing. Like what's one thing that you saw today that you would like to try and see how does it go in your organization? Not a lot of pressure. If you don't like it, you're like, well, that wasn't quite what I thought it would do for our team. That wasn't quite the win I hoped. Pretend there's an invisible undo button. Undo. Thanks everybody for trying that. Didn't go quite as well as we'd hoped. Let's try something different this next time. Okay? There's no commitment that this is your forever facilitation strategy or approach to grant teams. Try one thing, see how it works, give it a little bit of time to see if it works before then you decide, yes, we're going to keep this. Now go try something else new on top of it. Or like I said, hit kind of that invisible undo button. Ooh, this one. Great question here from John. So a challenge that they're facing coming into a large organization. Now, John has said he's a consultant, but I could see this question coming from an employee. I think that the question's the same. How, if you're coming into a very large organization, how do you identify the key players for a grant team? In this case, everybody's spread around the country, pretty new to grants. So I think that first you want to ask a lot of questions, right? Quiet observation. What do you see? Who's talking about what? But I would ask a lot of questions and not make assumptions. I'd ask questions of finance. Well, what does it look like if we were to, and try to understand some of the process? Talk to some programmatic colleagues. If you saw an email come across with a funding opportunity that you were interested in, what would you do? Right? You're just some inquis words. You saw me drink some water. Some just thoughtful inquiry. To quote Ted Lasso, right? To be curious, not judgmental. You're trying to find out what people might do. You don't know what the answer is going to be. You don't know maybe what your recommendation is going to be, but ask lots of thoughtful questions to help see what's in place. Whew, such great questions. I was asked, what does a work plan look like for a grant team? So usually I wouldn't have a work plan for a grant team. Maybe like the grant calendar, I guess, is what you could call a work plan. The grant calendar is what we agree on for upcoming deadlines that we're going to work towards. Usually I would, if I'm talking about a work plan, I'm thinking about as a program design element that is going to be part of what helps inform an application. I was asked if I could comment on if you had the opportunity to have outside help, what would be the best use of those funds? So I think, can you believe this? As a consultant, my answer is going to be, well, it depends. But if you go back to my question about who's already on your grant team and what strengths and skills and awesome things do they have in place for you, and what are you saying, I think we need more of this? That's what my answer would be. Well, could I get external support that could help us do mock review? Could I get support to help us with our budget narrative? Could I get help with fill in the blank for what you see as a need in your grant team? I would ask that question and trying to think about external support because again, everybody's going to have a different answer. All right, we got a question about research tools. And my answer is again, that there are lots of great tools. So there's no one perfect tool. I would encourage you to check out the research tools that are Business Alliance members of the Grant Professionals Association. There's a number of tools listed there. They also tell you if they offer any like discounts or demos or other like some of them, right? Foundation Directory Online has a unique partnership with Grant Hub and Foundant. So there's different reasons that you might want to check out tools, especially like if you say you're international, right? Some tools are really focused on that. Some are more focused on government. Some are more focused on US based. So the answer will really depend on what you're looking for.
I see a question about Granta Pro having the ability to do if-then workflow. And I know in the reporting capabilities for the dashboarding that is there, but in other areas, like if this, then set this task or do some of that workflow, I am not 100% sure of that application. I would encourage you to set up a one-on-one demonstration with that and that contact us form or asking that question on the website, someone could get you an answer. And I'll follow up with you, Elizabeth, on that.
Great. And I do see, because I was just scrolling the chat to look back, someone asked if we could repost the link to that logic model guidebook. So I did just grab that and paste it in the chat again. And I see that this is why I shouldn't do things off my memory. Truman said, the buck stops here. Thank you to everyone who helped so that I hope that comes up the next time I go to trivia night because I'll get it right, not wrong as I would have just now. So thank you for thoughtfully giving me the right answer, y'all. You're the best. Oh, did we do it,
I
Tammy? Did
think
we get through all the
we're doing
questions?
high five. Yes, we got through the questions. And want to thank everyone. Thank you, Diane, so much, as well as Megan behind the scenes. We love working with you both and your whole organization, partnering on International Grant Professionals Day, as well as these webinars and other opportunities is always a joy. And I really want all the audience to know that you have a very professional team, capable, and are a joy to work with. Thank you all so much for attending this webinar, sharing this hour and a half with us, and stretching your skills, learning new topics. And Diane, do you have any takeaway advice for everyone? I mean, I know you already at least do one thing that you learned. Anything else?
Like, remember, everyone is different. Don't worry about other people. Do what doesn't stress your organization out about grants when it comes to grant teams. I think that is my closing thought for today, Tammy.
My closing is to look for the follow-up email, get the slides, and as somebody said, that slide on celebrations, that's one thing to do more of in your organization or with your grant teams. Even if you're a team of one and have other people that help you, that's a great way to pull folks together. Thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you all on a future webinar that Foundant is going to have. You should get those invitations as well as a link in the follow-up email. Thank you all, and wish you all the best success in your fundraising efforts. Thank you.